We are so thankful that you are here today. Thank you for coming. We pray that you'll come back and be with us again whenever you possibly can. Just a couple of things before we get into the lesson today. Number one, you need to know that tonight the Mars Hill Bible School chorus will be here for us in our evening service. In fact, the young men of the chorus will conduct our service tonight. Brother Gill will be speaking, and you've heard him before. You know he's going to do an excellent job, and we look forward to that. And then after our service tonight, they will be singing for us, and that will be encouraging and uplifting. And so I encourage you to be here tonight, and we're looking forward to them being with us. Sorry that we are announcing this so late, but it was a little mix-up on date on our part. And so anyway, but it's fine for them to be here tonight. We're looking forward to that. Also, next Sunday, and again, that's just a week from today, we have our Friends Day that is coming up, and we want everyone to invite someone to come and be with you. I was encouraged. I want to tell you about this. Mark Simpson was telling me that he and Mark Sanders and Carl Ferris and I think Robbie Young are going to go through their neighborhood over there, and they're going to hand out these little things that we've been told about if you need something to hand someone. And so that got me kind of thinking. I talked to Joe, and we talked to Randy, and then I haven't talked to Brad yet, but I'm sure he's on board with this, and we're going to do the same in our neighborhood. Maybe you could do the same. But whether you do it in your neighborhood or wherever it is, be sure and invite folks to come and be with us next Lord's Day. We look forward to this time together. It's always a great time, and we look forward to the assembly that we will have during Bible class period in the auditorium here, as well as our worship together. So again, that is next Sunday. Looking forward to that. We continue today in our series, and that's actually based on Philippians 4:13. Which says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You did such a good job last week. Let's do it together again. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Paul made this comment about himself. But he was saying that because of how Christ empowers me and the things that I do in my life, all the things that I've faced, God has always seen me through everyone. And he knew that he always would, and you and I need to have that same lesson in our lives as well. What we've done in the last several weeks is that we have looked at some specific things and how God will help us through those things and help us to make a difference in His life. And that's exactly what I want, or in our lives, and that's exactly what I want to talk about today. And that is, I can make a difference. That's our lesson. I can make a difference. But it's not just you and me. But it's God working through us. And when we let God work in our lives, it's amazing what can happen. Some of you are familiar with this little story. Now, I put this up here that will probably remind you of a story. And actually it goes something like this. Said this man and his wife were kind of stressed out in their jobs, and they decided that they would take a vacation. So they went down to the seashore, Gulf Shore, Oceanside. And while they were there that night, the first night they were there was this big storm that took place. And man, they could see, it was lightning, they could hear the roar of the thunder, they could hear those waves crashing in. And they thought, man, what a storm. But they made it through the night okay, but the next morning the wife was still asleep, and the man got up and he thought, I think I'll walk outside to see if there's much damage that has been done. And as he walks down on the beach, he sees all these starfish that have washed up in the storm. And the tide was going out, and he knew that there were a lot of starfish. I mean, they were just countless. There were hundreds, there were thousands that were just thrown all along the beach that the storm had washed in. But he also saw an older man that was walking along. And he wasn't able to walk very fast, but he wasn't able to move very fast either. But he would bend over and he'd pick up a starfish and he'd pitch it back out into the ocean. And he saw him do that a couple of times. He went up to the gentleman. He said, sir, he said, if you don't mind me asking, he said, what are you doing? He said, well, it's kind of obvious, I guess. But these starfish have washed up overnight. And he said, there's no way they can get themselves back in the ocean because the tide is going out and the sun is coming up and they're going to die right here. He said, but sir, you don't understand. He said, look. He said, there are hundreds, there are probably thousands of these out here. He said, how are you going to make a difference by what little you can do? And he said, almost without missing stride, he said, the gentleman bent over and he picked up another one and he pitched him out. He said, well, it made a difference to him, didn't it? And he went on, he got another, made a difference to him, didn't it? You see, there you go. The kind of world that we live in, there are so many things that are going on. We feel so small. We think, is there anything that I can do to make a difference in this world? And the answer is, yes, there is. Paul knew that too. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It has been said, and I like to use it, that God and one person always make a majority. Don't ever forget that. God and one person always make a majority. So when we think how small we are, and we are, when we think how we're just one as opposed to all the people that live on the face of this earth, that's right. But God and one person always make a majority. So today I want us to think along those lines, and I want to talk about 4 things that will help us to think how we can make a difference in this world. But it's not just us, but letting God work in our lives. Number 1, I can make a difference because the Lord empowers me to do so. There's the passage that we use often in the Sermon on the Mount that says that, and in fact Jesus said this about us, you are. Now I didn't say you are potentially, but he said you are as my children, as followers of mine, as my people, you are the salt of the earth. He didn't say that by looking at somebody and saying, you know, there's a good guy right there and everybody likes him. He's just the salt of the earth. That wasn't what the Lord had in mind. But he says about every Christian that lives for him and has Christ in their hearts, he says, you are the salt of this earth. You have influence on this earth. And we all understand that very well, because if there's salt in something, we always know it. Salt makes a difference in a lot of ways, but in the world, Christians are the salt. But not only that, he went on to say that you're also the light of this world. Light makes a tremendous difference. And I don't know that we might identify everyone, but I guarantee you that every one of us sitting here today could think about somebody or some people that have been lights in our lives. Not just because of who they were, but because of the way they lived and the way they treated us. But especially in our spiritual walk, we always have those people that have been salt to us. We have those people that have shown the light to us, and what a difference they have made in our lives. And we would never discount if they never made a difference in anybody else's. We'd never discount the importance of that, because we know what a difference it has made for us. But the Lord is saying that we make a difference in this world. Not just in a few people, but in a world, because the world is unsalty. Because the world is, 2 in verse 10, there's a great statement that is made by Paul. He said that we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which he decided before the world ever began that we should live in them. The word there that says that we are his workmanship is really a word that we can get, and that really is a root word of our word poetry. We are God's poetry. What does that mean? Glenn is a great musician. He's a great singer. We've got other folks in here. They're great musicians. I'm a lover of music. That's my talent. I love it, but as far as being a musician, I'm not. As far as being a great singer, I'm not. But I think about this in the sense that it doesn't matter what notes you're on. If you put them with the other right notes, it's amazing how it can be a wonderful thing. When you put lines of poetry together, you know, you might have a great line here and a great line there and a great line there, and put them together, they seem to make no sense. But as workmanship, we are God's poetry. We come together to do something that he planned for us to do all along, but he empowered us to do that, or we would have no ability to do it. Also, Philippians 3:13, we just said it. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But you get on down to verse 19, and again he talks about how that God delivers. God gives us the ability to do anything. Don't ever discount what God has enabled you to do. Because God has empowered each one of us, and God gives us that power through his word to make a difference. Number 2, I can make a difference even when I doubt myself. One thing that you learn as you live a little while, and that is even the people that seem to be the people that are the most self-confident. If you get to know them very well, you're going to find that there are some things that, even with them, that they struggle with. Sometimes we doubt ourselves as to whether or not we're able or capable of doing certain things, and we have company. We talked about this guy a couple of weeks ago, so I'm not going to talk about him a lot, but think about Moses. when God appeared to him again in that burning bush, Exodus chapter 3, we learn that God said that you're my man, that I want to go back and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. I can't speak very well. They're all, send somebody else. He made all these excuses as to why he couldn't do it. He doubted himself, but God didn't. God never asked anything of anyone that we're not capable of achieving. Some folks say, well, I'm just a worrier. I can't help it. It's just the way I am. I'm just a worrier. You may have a real tendency, but if God tells us not to worry, then you can deal with it. Brother Stan, you don't realize what a temper I've got. I've just seemed like I've always had this temper. I don't doubt that. But God says we can be angry, but sin not. God doesn't require anything of anyone that we cannot accomplish. So God allows you to have a temper, but he says also, know that you've got to get it under control. We not say, well, there's this and there's that. Maybe. And it may be a fearful thing to think, I can change, I can be different, but we can. And when we make a difference, we can make a difference in someone else. You see, that's the key to all of this that I'm saying here today. If we're going to make a difference in the lives of other folks, then we've got to be different too. If we're not already there, if we are Christians, it's not that we've got to change from that, but if we're not living as a Christian should, or if we are yet to become a Christian, we've got to change ourselves so that then God can work through us to change others. We've got to be changed in order to change. I can make a difference. When I doubt myself, there was Gideon. I love reading Gideon. Went back and read about him even this morning as I was thinking about this. Remember the book of Judges, that there were these cycles that took place. And I don't want to explain all that again because I've talked about this too fairly recently. But what would happen is God's people would serve him for a while, and they'd get into sin. Then God would bring up another nation to hold them captive for a while until they were humble enough that they would start to seek God. And when they would cry out to God, then God would raise this deliverer that actually we call a judge, not a judge as we think about a judge in our day and time, but more like a conqueror, a deliverer. God would raise up a judge. There were 15 of those. And he would raise up this judge then to lead them out of captivity, whoever it might be that they were under at that time, and lead them back to God again. Well, on this occasion, we learned that Gideon is actually in a wine press, which was kind of a concealed area, but he was threshing out wheat. It didn't have anything to do with grapes. But the reason he was there is because it was one of those times when God had delivered them into the hands of an enemy because they had sinned against him. It happened to be the hands of the Midianites this time, and they were under their oppression for 7 years. An angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon while he's threshing out this wheat in the winepress. Oh, you man of valor, God has blessed you so. And his immediate response was, if God has blessed me so, why are we under the oppression that we're in, and why am I out here hiding trying to thresh out little wheat at this time? Now remember, I've heard our ancestors talk about how God led our people out of Egypt, and I've heard about the great powers and wonders he has done, but he said this: God has no longer remained with us. God has turned his back on us. God is not with us anymore. But the angel didn't veer at all from his mission. He says, God is with you, and you're going to be the man that would deliver your people out of the hands of the Midianites. What did he do? Start trembling a little bit. Whoa, wait a minute. I'm glad to hear the news, but not me, surely. Well, I'm of the smallest family. My family is small. Not only that, I'm the youngest in my family. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I am. But you're the man. And sure enough, God finally got that across to him. And he did bring about a great deliverance, obviously through the power of God, of his people. But scared to death at first. He didn't think that he could ever make a difference. He just thought that maybe this is going to be the way it was for the rest of his life. But with God's help, he did. Then there was a Saul, not Saul that became Paul, but Saul of the Old Testament, who was the first king of the United Kingdom. And we learned that God had already told Saul that he was going to be, through Samuel, that he was going to be the next king. When the day came that they were going to anoint him king, they couldn't find him. God says, I know where he is. He's out there hiding, the King James calls it, among the stuff. You know, we got a lot of stuff. That's where he was. But actually, more baggage is the way we would understand. He's out among the baggage. He's hiding out there. I can almost see that. Be like a tied raspberry trying to hide in this building. Because it said that Saul was head and shoulders above everybody else around him. And so I can see this big old tall drink of water trying to hide himself out there among the luggage. It must have been a kind of a laughable sight. Well, what's he doing that for? Because he's scared to death. He doesn't think that he's capable, and on down the line he kind of proved that, but at least at this point God says he's your king. I can make a difference not because my name is Moses, Gideon, or Saul. And you can make a difference not for the same reasons, but you can make a difference by God living in you. Next, I can make a difference wherever I am. We wear a lot of hats in life. But wherever that hat might be, whatever we might say about that hat, it might be a mother, a daddy, it might be, whatever, wherever we are. The truth is, God can use us. Paul said, to the Jews, I became a Jew. That didn't mean that he went back living that old lifestyle, that he went back to those old laws again. He just took their customs up. He tried to live among them as somebody that says, I'm not better than you. I want you to know that I'm here as among you as one that can help you. Not necessarily personally, but I can help you because of a message that I've got. And it's the message of Jesus. He said, to those that were without the law, I became as one without the law. Why? So that I might win them. He went on to say, kind of summarizing all of that, he said, I became all things, or I become all things to all men, in order that I might save some. He didn't mean that he partook in their sinful lifestyle. He just meant that he got on their level wherever they were, so that he could win their souls to the Lord. Now I want you to think right now, your age, wherever you are right now, and I want you to ask yourself, can you make a difference? I've already told you can, but you might wonder, I don't know. Can you make a difference on the job where you work? Can you make a difference in the school where you attend? Can you make a difference in the neighborhood? Can you make a difference wherever you are in life? I want to read you a story. So it might be that you know them too, and they're too humble to ever go for that, so I can't do that. But I want you to know this is not a story I pulled off the internet. This is a real life story, but it touched me so, and I was so thankful that they shared this story with me a while back. And I want you to listen. I'm not going to use the names, but just listen to the story. This person wrote a letter that is now living in another state, and they wrote it to somebody, and I will say they live in this state somewhere. He was, and now listen to this. It says, I was in Vietnam in 1971, where I worked for a private company providing helicopter maintenance for the U.S. Army. He said where he was, particularly for 3 months, and then he left to return to his home and family shortly before Christmas. He said, there was a young man. Now, this guy doesn't know if he's writing to the right person or not. He Googled the name and found that this was a name that might get in the right hands. He says, there was a young man who was in the Army, a very nice young man with a strong religious conviction or strong religious convictions, who had plans to work as a missionary. I remember seeing and hearing this young man as we would sit and as he would discuss the Bible. I remember one day that another GI was trying to start a portable air compressor and was having a lot of trouble. He was cursing at the compressor, hitting it to no avail, as anyone with any amount of intelligence would expect. He says that is this person, quietly took the rope or starter rope, and it will start. He pulled the rope, the compressor started, and everyone stood simply looking at the compressor. This young man approached everything in his life with the same calmness for the period of time that I knew him. He said, you, talking to this person, whoever he thought he might be, you made a good impression on me. For a period of 2 or 3 years, I've been working on family trees. And the subject of my time in Vietnam surfaced. One of my granddaughters suggested that I write a synopsis of events of that time of my life. It took a while to get started, and I've been in and out of it for about a year. That suggestion from my granddaughter is what brought me to think of you, my family, with less regret. If you are the one that I remember, I sincerely hope that you have had a good life, as I'm certain that you would have had no less. He did find the right person. But he just wanted to say that in circumstances that were so difficult, you were the light. You were the salt. You made a difference, not only right then, but a difference that's continued with me for years. We may never know what impact we might have on someone else. It has been said, and rightly so, that as Christians, all we do is we sow the seed. And as Paul would say, God gives the increase. We sow the seed. And we do the best that we can to encourage that, but we know it really takes God, it takes the Son, the S-O-N, to really make it grow. But we may move away from that seed. We may move on to another field. We may never know what happens after we leave. But God said, my word shall not return to me void. As George read this morning, there is power in the gospel to make the difference that God intends to make on this world. So again, it's not just you and me, but it's allowing God to work through us that can make all the difference. And we can make a difference wherever we are. And it might seem like the most unlikely of circumstances, but it's amazing what we can do if we allow God to do what He desires to do in our lives. Not only that, but we can make a difference in a unique way. The Old Testament story of Esther is a fascinating story. If you haven't read it lately, you ought to go home and read it. Just one of those, you can't read one chapter or two because you want to see what happens in the next chapter. But you remember there's an evil guy in the story by the name of Haman. And he doesn't like the Jews, and we don't have to go into all the reasons why, but he comes up with this plot, and the king approves of it, but he doesn't realize what he's really doing, that would actually have wiped out the Jewish population. And Haman is tickled to death because it feeds his pride. There's a young Jewish little killed. She had been killed too. She has a very godly cousin by the name of Mordecai. And Mordecai comes to her and he says, I'm sure you've heard about this plot. And he says, we're all going to be killed, it looks like, at least us. Now, he hadn't had enough confidence to say that maybe God will rise up somebody else out there that's going to take care of this, but for you and me, we'll never see it if we don't do something ourselves. And he makes a great statement in chapter 4 when he's saying, you need to go in before the king. He says, you don't know, but what maybe you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Everything worked out wonderfully because no doubt God was with her. She went in before the king, and they were not annihilated as the plan was laid out. No doubt God in His providence did not allow them to do that. But Esther did a beautiful thing, but her cousin encouraged her to do that beautiful thing. But she didn't know whether it was going to turn out that way or not. She said, okay, I'll go and see the king, and if I perish, I perish. In other words, I can do what I can do, and that's all I can do. If I don't do it, I know that nothing good is going to come from it. What a great lesson that is for you and me. It doesn't mean we're going to be successful in everything that we ever do. God doesn't promise that. But it's much better to fail in trying to do something than to never try, which is the biggest failure of all. And again, remember, it's not just us, but it's God with us that makes the difference. As I said a moment ago, sometimes you think, well, you know, I I'm not educated. I don't have a certain profession. You know, I've just always been a mama or whatever. Don't ever think that that is a small role, because it isn't. Think about Timothy. He was such a valuable servant in the Lord's kingdom. We learned that he had a grandmother by the name of Lois, and he had a mother by the name of Eunice. The only thing that we know otherwise, there would have never been a Timothy without a godly mother by the name of Eunice. There'd never been a godly mother by the name of Eunice, had there not been her mother, her grandmother Timothy, by the name of Lois. And there you go. There are a lot of us in this room today that would not be a Christian right now, had it not been for a godly mother or godly daddy or both, or a godly husband or a godly wife, or a godly friend, someone that made a difference. I firmly believe that there are people in the lives of every one of us sitting here today that you have an inroad with that no one else on the face of this earth would have. And God empowers you in a unique way to be the very one that can make. Sit and wonder this morning, can I make a difference? I want you to know that yes, you can. How can I do that? I can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me. But let me come back to something I said earlier, because this is where we have to end, but it's also the beginning of this particular matter. You have to be made different through the power of the Lord before you can make a difference godly way. We need so desperately in our society. Know that we have a lot of them here, but we need so much in our society to have godly daddies, because godly daddies make a difference. We need godly mothers. Know that we have a lot of them here, but in our society we so badly need godly mothers, because they make a difference. We so much need, and I know that we have a lot of them here, we need godly, they can. It may not be that you see it immediately, but you can make a difference in this world. I can, you can, we all can make a difference when we let God work in our lives. Today it may be that you need to make a difference in your own life. You need to be made different because you're not a Christian yet, and you can be. It may be that you are a Christian, but you haven't allowed those differences to take place in your life, and you need to make a difference. It may be that today you would feel like it may be that there are various things that are going on in your life. I guarantee you that God can always make a difference. And so today, as we sing this song of encouragement, if you need to make that change, we pray that you will, while together we stand and sing a song of encouragement.